located in beautiful downtown Missoula, Montana. Now, here's your host, Neil Chase.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's program of Baha'i Phone and Live. Now, for those of you who haven't seen our program before, we present this special live format as an open forum every Friday night at 7 here on MCAT to deal with different issues, spiritual issues and issues of world concern and national concern that's taking place in our world today. And that there is no open forum for these things in this country. That the main networks on television, NBC, ABC, CBS, their news broadcasters, is just another arm of the powerful corporations in this country that are all aligned with big business and government kind of rolled up into one. And they've got their own agenda, and their own propaganda line that they want to put forth to promote their own plans, which is based on their greed and their lust for power and acquisition of whatever it might be that interests them at the time. The prime thing today happens to be oil. Our forum tonight, we're going to be getting into the history of the Baha'i faith. And the reason it's live is you'll be able to call in after the presentation tonight and ask questions of myself or tonight's guest speaker. And this is essentially important, that people today need to dare to think that our Constitution of the United States of America is not worth the paper it's written on unless people become activated and exercise their freedom of religion, their freedom to speech, their freedom to assemble, and their freedom to press. If they don't do these things, then that document might not even exist. The people today that don't exercise this right or this muscle to dare to think are even failing, if they claim to be Christian even, to follow the words of Christ, that to seek the truth, and the truth will set us free. The truth is the most powerful thing in the world. The truth is the greatest thing that exists. It's from the truth that we have a grasp of reality. And that truth comes to us in two phases, both science and the revelation that comes down from God. But if we fail to seek this truth, we will remain eternally prisoners of folly and imagination and lies. Now, if something's not true, it's false. And if it's false, well, then it's a lie. And the Scripture says that the people love the lie. Well, what lie are we talking about? Well, there's a lot of lies out there. And you might say there's a lot of things where we can get to the truth of certain issues. But the greatest truth of all things is the truth that's contained in the cause of God for the welfare and the betterment and the safety and security and salvation of the peoples of this world. The Holy Scripture says that God sent His prophets and the manifestation of Himself into this world so that we should have life and have more of life abundantly. That through the promises and covenant of Baha'u'llah in our day today, we've been guaranteed the forgiveness of sins by coming under this covenant. Jesus Christ's promise of the forgiveness of sins to the Christian people is contingent upon them accepting the return of Jesus upon His second coming. The Christian world does not have salvation and forgiveness of sins if they reject Jesus on His return. To think that they're saved by having Jesus in their heart as their Lord and Savior, and yet deny the second appearance of this divine reality is laughable. And if a Christian sat down and thought it out, they might laugh at it. Well, today it finally started to occur to me why the Trinity might be something of a popular religion, although we don't find the Trinity in the Bible. You know, I don't know what it was, but it kind of just dawned on me today when I was thinking about it. You know what that is? It occurred to me. Well, I was watching the news tonight and I saw how the death of those 18 or more children in Scotland, the massacre of those children. They're just young babies, you know, going to school. The people are all torn up about it. And one story especially kind of touched the people that heard this. That one young boy had his best friend. And when the one who did this came in with the weapon of destruction to kill these children, his little young friend, a 5-year-old or so, maybe 6 or 7, threw himself on top of his best friend and was killed. And this boy that his best friend protected was the only one not to be injured in this shootout. And all of England's in an uproar. And the whole world is lamenting about how these children could be massacred. But what's 18 or 20 or even 50 compared to 560,000 of these children destroyed by a real weapon of mass destruction? The U.S. imposed sanctions in the name of the UN against the country of Iraq. Now the people of America, well, they got in a pretty big uproar over children being killed. When it was reported by ex-President George Bush and Naira, the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, that the Iraqis had went into Kuwait and had emptied out incubators to take back to Iraq and thrown the Kuwaiti babies on the floor. America was in an uproar that Saddam Hussein and the Iraqis would kill babies. And they said maybe 300 babies. And because of this story of the death of 300 babies, we went to war and passed this in the Senate. Now we've got a transcript here that I want to present to you. Bob, if you could, they got the transcript in the other room. Will you bring it out in a minute for me, please? And I'm going to read this in a second. Now this thing was false. After the fact, they went in with 60 Minutes and John R. MacArthur of Harper's Magazine, and they found out that Naira was not a Kuwaiti refugee. She was the ambassador from Kuwait's daughter. She wasn't even in Kuwait. She'd been in America the whole time. That no babies were killed. Not 300 babies thrown from incubators, not 100, not 50, not 18 children like in Scotland that was killed, but 0. That it was just all a lie. But the American people and the American government loved this lie and had itchy ears for it, like the Bible says they would love the lie. And we went to war, but no children were even harmed with incubators being taken. It was just a bunch of lies. Yet we went to war. And when we went to war against Saddam Hussein, that was based on a lie. Now this I have by David Fingrut from the Seed Alternative School in Toronto. And the publication date on this is 1993. And it comes off the internet, and it's called Operation Desert Storm, an outright disinformation scheme. Maybe we can get a close-up shot of that. Now for people that are on the internet and that are interested in getting more information like this, you can find this from the Iraqi Action Coalition, which is an American organization put together by Americans at http://www.ncsu.edu/user/r/masri/ww/IAC. Now why did I point all that out? That this is not a racist document. This is a factual document put together by some of our friends up there in Toronto, where Abdul-Baha had occasion to speak when he was in the country and in Canada in 1912. And this is published in 1993. And in this document, it has the transcript of April Glaspie talking to Saddam Hussein. And this transcript can also be found in Pierre Salinger's book, The Secret Dossier. And this is what U.S. Ambassador Glaspie says. She says to Saddam Hussein, on July 25th, 1990, 8 days before the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, a quiet, largely unreported meeting took place between Saddam Hussein and U.S. Ambassador Iraq, April Glaspie, at the presidential palace in Baghdad. which has since been destroyed by the war. And here's the transcript. April Glaspie says, I have direct instructions from President Bush to improve our relations with Iraq. This is 5 days before the August when the invasion of Kuwait started. We have considered, she says to Saddam Hussein, sympathy for your quest for higher oil prices, the immediate cause of your confrontation with Kuwait. As you know, I have lived here for years and admire, Saddam, your extraordinary efforts to rebuild your country. We know, President Bush and me and the Secretary of State, we all know that you need funds for your country. We understand that. And our opinion is that you should have, Saddam, the opportunity to rebuild your country. We can see that you have deployed massive numbers of troops in the South. Normally, that would be none of our business. But when this happens in the context of your other threats against Kuwait, then it would be reasonable for us to be concerned. For this reason, I have received an instruction directly from the White House, in other words, to ask you, in the spirit of friendship, not confrontation, Saddam, regarding your intentions, why are your troops massed so very close to the Kuwaiti borders? And Saddam Hussein, taking his best friend, the United States of America, and George Bush and April Glaspie into his confidence, replies, as you know, for years now, I have made every effort to reach a settlement on our dispute with Kuwait. There has been a meeting in 2 days, and I'm prepared to give negotiations only this one more brief chance. When we, the Iraqis, meet with the Kuwaitis, and we see there is hope, then nothing is going to happen. But if we're unable to find a solution, then it will be natural that Iraq will not accept death, because the Kuwaitis, which was the 19th province of Iraq, was cross-drilling and waging economic war in Iraq. And Bush and the Secretary of State and Glaspie knew this. And so what does she say to him? April Glaspie. Well then, she says, Saddam, we have no opinion on your Arab-Arab conflicts, such as your dispute with Kuwait. Secretary of State James Baker has directed me personally to emphasize this instruction, which therefore comes from the George Bush and the White House itself, first given to Iraq in the 1960s, that the Kuwait issue is not associated with America at all. And she gave him the thumbs up and the green light to take Kuwait. And then they put out the lie that there was maybe a few hundred babies killed to rile up the American people. Because when they hear child abuse, they get excited. Well, there was no child abuse. There was no babies thrown out of incubators. It was all lies. According to Newsweek magazine, the Texas authorities down in Waco investigated David Koresh's group for 2 years about suspected child abuse. And after a rigorous, a thorough, organized, professional investigation by those authority departments, that if they found even a trace scant of any truth to those lies, they would have marched in there and done something about it, concluded that there was absolutely no abuse of children in any way, shape, or form in Waco, Texas. Until Bill Clinton and Reno used poison gas to molest those children and murdered over 70 innocent American citizens practicing their constitutional rights of freedom of assembly, freedom of press, of printing, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to bear arms. The warrant that they were supposedly going to give to David Koresh was a $200 fine that he might have had to pay if he had automated one of his semi-automatic weapons, which it wasn't known for sure that he had. Those people were put to death for not paying a $200 tax. And the American people let it happen because they said there was child abuse. And you know how much child abuse there was there? There was zero. And how many babies were pulled out of incubators in Kuwait? Zero. And how many children have died in Scotland? 18. And how many children have U.S. baby-killing sanctions destroyed in Iraq? 560,000. Over 500,000. And America won't do anything about it. The bombing on Iraq was illegal. It was an act of terrorism. Did you know that the amount of uranium and radioactive material that we used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki when we dropped the bomb is almost 3,000 tons less than what radioactive material we dumped on Iraq? That's right. There was only a few pounds of uranium in the 2 bombs we used on Japan. And that only remained in a little 20-foot crater. The rest of the radiation was part of fallout, which has a half-life of 4 to 6 hours. And these cities are rebuilt now in Japan. But we used depleted uranium tips from our spent fission reactors and dumped over 3,000 tons of depleted uranium all across the country of Iraq, which would have equaled dropping maybe 300 times more nuclear weapons on Iraq than what we did on Japan. Did you know that the TNT firepower involved in the bombing of Baghdad, the systematically surgical strategic destruction of civilian population centers and hospitals and schools and baby milk factories and farmland, outweighs the TNT power in explosive intensity by over 1,000%, or if even, than the TNT power of what we did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's right, folks. America nuked Iraq with an incredible amount of nuclear waste and depleted uranium through conventional bombing TNT power and got away with it in the eyes of the American people because they didn't use a so-called nuclear bomb, which would have been less destructive if we would have just dropped one. With 3,000 tons of depleted uranium spread out through the country of Iraq, the United States of America used a scorched earth policy to destroy not the military of Iraq, not Saddam Hussein, but the innocent men, women, children, and babies that are over there that are now developing leukemia at the rate of thousands and thousands of percentages above the normal. This was a genocide against the Iraqi people in violation of the Geneva Convention rights of warfare that the United States government of America used against the Iraqi people. And the next whammy, after getting away with nuking the country, after we told Saddam he could have Kuwait, which we knew was his 19th province, was these sanctions, starving out the people by banning certain materials like penicillin or Valium that an epileptic baby needs to survive. Well, what are we worried about? That Saddam's going to take 5 or 6 tons of Valium and put it on the end of a Scud missile and tranquilize an American city? Or that he's going to take a bunch of penicillin and shoot it at San Francisco and kill a bunch of VD or something? These medicines aren't military or destruction things. These are for the benefit of the people. And without this, the United States of America and its government is killing these babies. Well, you know what? If we had a dictatorship in this country and we had some sort of an absolute monarch ruling in Washington, then I'd be on here tonight telling you that that guy was an SOB because he did this on his own. But America ain't so lucky because America has something better than that. Now, even a dead dog has a shiny white tooth. America has a democratic and republican form of government. The people that represent in Washington, and the president is elected, supposedly, constitutionally. Bill of Rights League, a government for the people and by the people and of the people. And then we appoint an ambassador to sit at the United Nations on the Security Councils to vote the voice of the American people. And if the American governmental policy is to kill innocent children in Texas and wipe out over 500,000 of them in Iraq and target Cuba next because they're non-white and non-Christian, then in a government which is representative of the people are to blame, because the people could vote somebody else into there, or the people could write a petition to the UN and say that they want the vote at the Security Council to be changed. All the states of this country has a referendum where all the people could vote something in as the law of the state. But the American people do nothing. The American people do nothing. What about the people of Missoula? Is this America, love it or leave it? Or is this America, love it and change it? This country has a wicked history. After the Civil War, after President Lincoln had been in touch with the Tsar of Russia and found out about Baha'u'llah in the 1850s, the Tsar said he would do away with serfdom in Russia if Lincoln would do the Baha'i thing and do away with slavery in the United States. They were in correspondence. So he did. And they passed 3 amendments to our Constitution guaranteeing the rights of all citizens, at least the men, the right to vote, the black men, and these other 2 amendments. Well, after this, these SOBs got into the Supreme Court and they reinterpreted those amendments, that the federal government had no right to prevent the right for somebody to vote. But they said that didn't mean the states didn't have that right to prevent the black man to vote. And then the federal government said that the federal government would protect the black man from being beaten up, meant by a federal government official. But that didn't mean they had the right to protect the black man from the KKK, which is why they rose to such prominence with their grand wizards and stuff. And it wasn't until people spoke out and had a rallies and a peace march during the time of President Kennedy in the early 60s that these segregation laws, which were unconstitutional, was overturned. And although those constitutional laws was on the paper and in the books, it was interpreted as a double standard to squeeze these people out because they was black. Because they were people of color. Because they were non-white Anglo-Saxons. And now what? We've got a constitution that gives due process of law in court, that says we have the right to a fair trial, that gives search and seizure laws to protect our personal property. So we've got the Miranda passed where they have to get a warrant before they search our house. And these laws have been overturned by the people in Washington, where now they can come in without a warrant and search your whole house. And if they find something that they feel is condemnable against you, or they plant something that's condemnable against you, they can still use it in court, overriding the warrant, which is part of the Constitution of this country. And America let it pass, and the Supreme Court upheld it. A man just recently had been arrested for some sort of prostitution act with a prostitute in his wife's car. And the cops confiscated his car and kept it. And according to the Supreme Court decision, they can keep the car. Because if a property owner, the wife, or a landlord that's got nothing to do with it, and somebody in their house is caught with a drugs, or a prostitution act, or something else, or something's planted there, the government can steal their property away from them. And they don't get reimbursed financially or anything. That violates the American Constitution. And now they want to pass so-called anti-terrorist bills, which takes away more of the freedoms of the people. Why is the freedom of religion good? Why is the right to assemble good? Why is the freedom of speech good? Why are these things that were put into the American Constitution also found in the revelation of God from Baha'u'llah today? Because it's better to have everybody free to practice religion and have a few kooks worshiping a bunny rabbit as part of their religion, which might be false, than to have some sort of state religion that punishes people who don't believe in the state religion with death. 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, Jesus, that didn't have the official state religion of Rome, or the so-called hierarchical state religion of the Jews, was put to death as a heretic. And at least the Freemasons that founded this country that had some semblance of Christianity didn't want to set up a country with a state religion and a state of policy so that people that had different beliefs and different ideologies and different race, creeds, or colors would be put to death. And now the tide is turning back. Sure, the Supreme Court made good decisions in the 60s and overturned some of these bad ones. But when Tricky Dick got in office, he started plugging his own people into that Supreme Court. And now look at the type of decisions this body is kicking off. Once Thurgood Marshall left that body, you could have kissed the stuff goodbye. You got nobody else defending minority rights on there anymore, just about. It's a shame. America, love it and leave it. America, love it and change it. Now, in this nuclear age that we live in, I can tell you personally that the fate of every couch potato out there is to become French fries. The Bible says that this world is stored up for fire. Jesus Christ said that a fruitless tree was fit for the fire. And a couch potato is a fruitless tree. Now on March 23rd at 11:30 a.m., not this Saturday, but next Saturday, at the courthouse, there's going to be a coalition of different groups. This has been helped to be organized by the Baha'is under the covenant to rally against these baby-killing sanctions. Now they're put forth in the name of the UN through pressure of the United States. And the ones on Cuba is just through the United States. Did you know that on January 16th, 1990, the eve of the Gulf War bombing in Baghdad, the United Nations was in session to figure out how to deal with the situation that George Bush created by suckering Saddam Hussein into taking Kuwait and telling him nothing would happen. And while these people were in their meeting, it came over CNN that the United States was bombing Baghdad. This was Washington, the United States, using the United Nations as a puppet. Now in front of that United Nations, founded by the Roosevelts, inculcated with utopian ideals like we the people of the United States of the world, or United Nations of the world, have certain inalienable rights, and put forth with the 12 principles of Baha'u'llah as drafted by Eleanor Roosevelt into a world bill of human rights. Stamped in stone in front of that building is the house of God that all the nations of the world will flow to and beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Came running out of that meeting to find out that they'd made no decision, that the United States had taken this up on their own. Is the United Nations the beast? Well, it's hard to say that countries like El Salvador and the people living there and those in Panama that we stole the canal from and killed maybe 10,000 innocent people and had the Army Corps of Engineers bury into a mass grave with Hitler-type acts are part of a beast. But this beast has a bear's feet and it has an eagle's wings in Revelation 13 and Daniel 7. And it's got a leopard's body and a lion's mouth and 10 ugly horns and 7 ugly heads. And this is not just the United Nations. And it's not just the Security Council. It's the 4 Christian nuclear superpowers in the name of Jesus that run that United Nations as a corrupt mafioso city boss driving organized crime through some local suburb. But they're doing it on a global scale. They're crooks up there of the representation of the United States, the eagle's wings, France the leopard, England the lion, and Russia the bear. That's the beast. Those 4 countries that each have 4 veto power permanent seats on the Security Council. And China's so afraid to get nuked, and they were so afraid China would nuke them, they gave them veto power, and they abstained from everything, getting trade favors from the West. And as China abstains, well, we're just not blaming them for the evils that this United Nations Security Council, 4 countries of the beast, is putting upon the people. In fact, if it was spiritual, it could solve a lot of the problems in China and the East as well as the West. The 10 ugly heads are the 10 apostate, corrupted, revealed religions that's ruled with an iron fist by the most wicked people in the world. The clergy, the priesthood, and I can only think of somebody worse than that. The media person, the mouthpiece of this beast, spewing out lies and putting a media blackout over the truth that refuses to publish to the people of the world, although the power is within their hands, given to them by God as members of the press, to tell the world that Jesus has returned. 100 years ago at the World's Fair, they had a contest about what the most astounding headline would be in the newspaper. And some people said, Martians invade Earth. And other people said, new world found inside planet, And another one says, Jesus returns. You know which one won the contest? The one that said, Jesus has returned. This is the scoop of the century. Baha'u'llah is not with us, but his establisher, the return of Jesus, is. And nobody gets to the Father, Baha'u'llah, except through the Son. He's not one way to get there. He's the only way. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And nobody gets to the Father except through the return of Jesus. This don't apply to Jesus on his first coming, because all the Christians in the world and the leadership of the Christian churches and the leadership of the Christian governments is leading us to hell in a handbasket. If this is the only way to get to the Father is to follow the Christian clergy, which is corrupt, and the Christian politicians, which is corrupt, into the depths of Hades and make some deal with Mephistopheles, I don't see that in the Bible. These people have made a deal with the devil. They bartered away eternal salvation for a few paltry years of rulership on this dirt bag of a planet that becomes our eternal tomb. You'll spend a lifetime here, which is the twinkling of an eye. And then you get buried in the ground where you stay for aeons and aeons and aeons and eons. In eternity, this world is your eternal tomb. The dinosaurs are extinct, wiped out from global catastrophe. And God saw fit to turn those dinosaurs into oil. And we're fighting over residue from the extinct dinosaurs, because a lot of it happens to be given to the Muslims. Does that make any sense at all? We're going to have an army and send men and women, the best of our people from our rural cities that didn't go to Harvard and didn't go to Yale, the best of our people that didn't become corrupt to join the system which is killing the best of our people. Why are we sending them to Iraq? Why do we have 100,000 troops surrounding Iraq? For the oil? Well, then why not just grind these people up and stick them right into your gas tank now? Is that what it's about? You don't understand why America would use saturation bombing and a scorched earth policy using depleted uranium to wipe out the agriculture of Iraq. Why would they do that? Because they want the oil. That's why. Don't look for something complicated. There's no conspiracy out there. This is just the lowest common denominator. Good, old-fashioned American greed. That's why. And why does the Bible say not to disturb the oil? Because God knew the Christians, although he sent them Jesus, And although Jesus was crucified once physically on Calvary Cross, that these people, in the name of Jesus, that love the lie, that when no babies were killed others, and that when they killed babies, turned the other cheek, in the name of Jesus, would be the guilty ones, to suffer the retribution of not standing up and making a difference. That they would suffer the retribution. If America was a dictatorship, then that Hitler in the White House that we said Heil Hitler to, we could blame him. And even if the American presidential election coming up looks to you like a choice between Mussolini and Genghis Khan, and you don't know who to pick, and maybe you'll pick the one that'll share the spoils, at least we won't starve while we're here, whatever you're going to do, what do they call it, the best of the worst, picking what's that called when you pick the worst of two bad things, or the best of two bad things? No. That when we make a choice, sometimes we have to pick the second worst instead of the very worst. Well, maybe you see it like that. But we don't have a Hitler there. We cannot blame American foreign policy and American laws that are being passed in Washington depriving us of our constitutional rights on the people in Washington when they represent the people in America. And God's not stupid. God can see. God sees the Constitution of the United States. He knows the people can make a difference. And therefore he holds the American people accountable when that difference is not made. The people that founded this country knew that the only way to cause change was through bloody revolution, like that happens repeatedly in the past. So they thought they'd clean it up a little bit by having an organized revolution every 4 years, by getting new people into office, so we wouldn't have to off with their heads or kill a bunch of people. So we have an organized revolution. It's called an election. Now, I'm not political. I'm neither Democrat or Republican. Baha'u'llah and Shoghi Effendi said we should vote for the best candidate, even if it's the best of two bad things. We should still vote for the best. We don't have to vote if we don't want to either. But we don't vote party tickets. America's about money. The people that get elected are the people that have the money to afford to campaign. You can't even run for the presidency unless you get, like 20,000 or 100,000 signatures to get on the ballot? You need money to do that. And then because money got you elected, when you're up there in Washington, money buys the law. And the big businesses and the international bankers that have a global marketing plan buy the laws of the nations and orchestrate the wars. According to Douglas from the Supreme Court, when he came to Missoula in the late 60s, he warned the citizens of Missoula and those of America that he talked to that there was a third power operating behind the scenes. The Trilateralists, the Bilderbergers, the World Banker, the Center of Foreign Relations. Well, who belongs to these organizations? Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, the NBC News, the ABC News, CBS News, George Bush, Bill Clinton. It's all sewed up in one bag. And what can we do as Americans to make a difference? Well, there was a lot of people rallying and peace marching on Martin Luther King's birthday. How many years has it been since he's been assassinated? Over 30? Where were these people 30 years ago when he was alive and marching? But 30 years later, they'll whitewash his tomb? I'm not talking against them. But if these people are true people, if these people are people of God, they should be on this courthouse lawn at 11:30 a.m., Saturday, March 23rd, to protest against this U.S. and United Nations baby-killing sanctions policy. A lot of people march to free Tibet and for other causes. And I'm not against these things, and I think these things should be redone. Why am I in support of the Martin Luther King March? Because I'm afraid that the black man will just lose all his rights again all over with. Like the Jews that went through not just the Holocaust under Hitler, but the ones of Herod at the time of Jesus' birth. Or those that were slaughtered in genocide at Moses as the time of Pharaoh. This stuff doesn't go away. It keeps coming back. So we should march on Martin Luther King Day so segregation don't come back. And we should commemorate the Holocaust so it doesn't happen again. But it happened in Bosnia, and it's happening against the Iraqi baby. And it might not be fashionable to stand up and do something while it's happening, but I'll tell you one thing. Intelligent people can see that this is wrong. And many groups in Missoula are against this. And many people and individuals are against this. If you are against this, show up at that courthouse lawn on March 23rd at 11:30 a.m. Saturday. And Ramsey Clark, the ex-attorney general under Kennedy, he's even considering coming out here for that. We should hear from him this weekend on when he might be able to come to Missoula. But he would like to speak in front of a lot of people. And you know how many people in America are willing to listen to him? A few people in New York, some Iraqi Americans in Michigan, some people in San Francisco that are videographers that are at least documenting this Holocaust atrocity in Iraq that we dump nuclear waste on that kills these babies. And a handful of people in Missoula, Montana. And who are these people in Missoula? Well, the Baha'is would like to be part of this and get the people down there. But these other people can see that it's wrong to kill children. That's simple. It's not about money. We don't want your money. And we don't want your support. Think about those babies dying. Baha'u'llah wrote that when he heard the cries of the babies from their mother's wombs, he doubled their inheritance in the things of this life and the next. That the Baha'i faith is not just some like activist movement that vocal, like these Iraqi coalition and Ramsey Clark that knows this is wrong. We're saying that God has spoken today through the return of Christ, and he says it is wrong. It's part of the revelation of God that this is wrong. You don't have enough sense to see it's wrong because children are dying. Maybe you have enough sense to see it's wrong because God has said it is wrong. Do you have any sense? I think you do. I think American people are highly intelligent and ingenious. And if they wouldn't play the ostrich act and look at the facts, they would go and do something about this. Now, maybe it's not politically correct. Maybe it's politically correct to have those babies die. Well, I don't care what's politically correct. President Nixon knew that it was politically correct to tell the American people that he was going to end the Vietnam War, which was started because we said Americans was killed in the Gulf of Tonga. It never happened. It was a lie. Yet we went to Vietnam because people love the lie. We went to Iraq because babies were killed. They weren't. It was a lie. But when the truth is there that they're really being killed, who will stand up and be the first? Who among you will gather up their friends and be the first to speak out? Not for me, not for Neil Chase, not for God, not for Baha'u'llah, but just for the children alone. Now, I've been saying this on TV for 5 years. 5 years. Do something about it. This isn't something like we're shifting gears on. We've been speaking against this atrocity since 1990. And on television for about 5 years. Every week for several hours on a live program. And when the people can call in, when we have a woman on the phone who's just come back from Iraq, Ramsey Clark's assistant, that's seen this devastation, that knows about the fallacy of the beginning of the war, that knows we depleted and nuked that country with depleted uranium, that knows the second whammy is the real weapons of mass destruction, the sanctions, and also knows about the media blackout. We have people call up in this program that wants to know what to do when a groundhog's nose is wet and how many times Charlemagne washed his horse. Now that may sound humorous, and it might be relieving tension from people that see this as a little too serious for them. But you think God doesn't see this stuff? Sure, it might be a laugh for you, but what do you think it looks like in the eyes of God? Why don't you think about that? Now, we're not here to judge the people.
they're disgusting and egregious acts, if they are people that are in with the crowd that committed them, well, that's judge them on their own. The book of Revelation says the people will be judged by what they have done. So I was thinking today, gee, why is this Trinity so appealing? Why doesn't it just go away? It's obviously not true. It's not in the Bible. Historians know it's a man-made fake doctrine from the Council of Nicaea. The Catholic Encyclopedia tells you it comes out of Gnostic paganism from Babylon. They even print it. They're so firm in the saddle they're not ashamed to tell people the satanic and Babylonian origins of it. Why do they stick to this? And I was thinking about it. And then I thought to myself, wow, if somebody was that corrupt and that evil to sit back and that when lies were told that babies were killed, use that lie as an excuse to kill millions, or the Americans in Waco. And then when real babies is killed to do nothing, well, that Trinity would be a pretty good thing if it were true, because you'd have all your sins forgiven. And bastards like that have so many sins that they need a religion like the Trinity, so they can continue these genocidal acts against the Jews and the blacks and the Irish that were slaves in England, or whatever group, race, or creed they target to be the next. If this American policy today isn't like that of Hitler's in Germany, then the only reason it's not like that is because it's far worse. We've toppled governments. We've destroyed civilians. All for oil and greed. Now, why did we want that Panama Canal? Why did we use Operation Just Cause to keep Panama on January 1st, midnight, December 31st to 89-90? We were going to give that canal back to the Panamanians. And 2 weeks before that, we went in there with Operation Just Cause and took it back. Why? We bulldozed over almost 10,000 civilians, some people have estimated, into a mass grave. We used strange weapons on them like phosphorus that took their bodies and dissolved them into mounds of goo, of which we have videotape of this to show in this program in the upcoming weeks. It's disgusting. George Bush said that we did it because an American was harassed and his wife was sexually harassed. And in reality, that American soldier and his wife provoked the people that they got into a fight with. It was staged. When we caught Noriega, we found porno magazines. We found red underwear and pajamas and voodoo things in this desk of his that showed he was just got to be the rottenest guy ever. Well, when we toppled Chile a few years earlier, guess what they found in that guy's office? The same desk, the same pajamas, the same drugs, and the same porno mags. This is all false. It's all planted. Why did we take the canal back? Because you can't ship oil from the Middle East by airplane. It's too expensive. The best way to do it's by boat. And the shortest way to bring oil from the Mideast to America or from another end of the world is you want to go through the Panama Canal. And therefore we want that for our world shipping, for the transfer of oil and other goods. Back to oil again. Oil. Do not disturb the oil, it says. But America was greedy, and it has. And then it says, do not disturb the wine of the covenant of God. That's what tonight's presentation is about. The history of the coming of the return of Christ and Jesus in the last 150 years, and the bringing forth of this covenant of God for the salvation of the people of the world. And the Baha'i outfit has tampered with this wine of the covenant and violated it, and are misguiding the United Nations and the people of the world as to what the revelation of Baha'i is about. They support the Gulf War. They're for these sanctions. They're for these baby killings. Are these people Baha'is? They're Satanists. They're self-serving is what I mean by that. They have no God, but their ego. Now maybe you know somebody that's a Baha'i, and maybe they're very sincere. Well, if they refuse to investigate that organization they belong to is corrupt and come under the provisions of the covenant, then you bet they're sincere. They're sincerely wrong. And they can spend eternity sincere in hell with being poked with a stick, so to speak, as if that's the way it is. What is Dante's Inferno? It's a nuclear holocaust unleashed on this world. Did you ever look at pictures of hell from the medieval view? Bodies being torn about, devils raping women, eating their flesh, spewing babies on sticks, famine and pestilence and disease, starving the people down. That's not a vision of hell, it's a vision of the 6 o'clock news. This is hell on earth. We're living in hell on earth. And Buchanan's answer is to put an economic buffer zone around this country so Americans can maintain their fat standard of living compared to the thin one of the rest of the people. I don't know how you were raised, but when I was raised, and when our friends of mine were raised, their parents told them when they were eating that there were people starving in other places of the world. Now, it wasn't until I got older that I found out that it was our government that was helping to starve them. What are you going to do about it? You're going to call in tonight and ask about Charlemagne's horse again or something like this? Or are you going to make a difference? Now, one person can make a difference. One time there was a contest. And the king of the land, he wanted to know what the greatest thing, the most powerful thing in the world was. And he assembled all the people together for a party. A banquet table of food and drink. And they were marrying away, and one of them stands up. He says, "Oh, king, I know what the greatest thing in the world is." He says, "What is it?" "It's kings, oh king. They move the masses of people. They organize bridges. They wage war. They conquer their enemies. They hold the life and death of the citizens within their hands. Kings are the most powerful thing." The king said, "Well said, you know." And then another one stood up. He says, "I got something more powerful than kings, although kings are powerful," he said. And the king said, "Say your say." And he says, "Women. Women are the most powerful things in the world. Kings are putty in the hands of women." Women give birth to kings, and they wouldn't go against their mothers. And they hold the sway over even kings. And the king looked at his mom and his wife, and he said, and they were looking at him, and he says, "Well, yeah, you got a real good point there." And then another one stood up, and he says, "King," and he toasted him with a glass of wine. He says, "Something's more powerful than kings and women, O king." The king says, "What's that?" "Wine! It gets kings drunk, and women too. And when the wine goes in, the secrets come out. The wine is the most powerful thing. It can subdue a whole army. It can change the course of history." And they were all saying, "Well, yeah," they were kind of feeling the wine. They go, "You got a real point there." So then finally another one stood up. And he says, "King, there's something more powerful than kings, although they're powerful, certainly, and women and wine." He says, "What's that?" He says, "King, it has to be, and it only is, the truth. The truth will sober up a drunken man. He can't drink enough to forget the truth. The truth overpowers the women, and even kings are but vassals to the truth." And the room fell silent. And the king says, "You've won the contest." And this man was Zerubbabel from the scriptures. He says, "What do you want, O Zerubbabel? I promised the winner of the contest they can have everything. I'll make you a king. I'll give you a harem of beautiful women. You can have all the wine and food you want in the world as your reward. What do you want?" He says, "Oh, king, I don't want a kingship, and I don't want a harem of women, and I'm not interested in wine. The truth is the greatest thing. I want a temple built for the truth. I want a house built on this earth in the name of the God of truth. Will you help me build this house for God?" And the king said, "Yes." And they rebuilt the temple to the Lord. And when they broke the covenant, it was burned down again. And the Tsar imitated it with the World Court. And it failed, and we had World War I. And the Wilsons, that was Baha'is, imitated it. And America failed to join. We had World War II. And the Roosevelts, that was Baha'i, imitated it. And we're going to have World War III with the failure of this UN, which is not the house of God, but the beast that will be taken alive and thrown into a thermonuclear lake of fire. But there is a house of the Lord built. And it's built by the hands of the people? No. It's a temple not built by hands. But it's been established by the almighty power of God through the mandate that Dr. Leland Jensen has as the establisher of Baha'u'llah and this Baha'i world faith. And he is against these baby-killing sanctions. And God is against these baby-killing sanctions. And the International Baha'i Council on 1830 South Avenue is against these baby-killing sanctions. The people of God around the world are against these things that kill these innocent children. And there's no fence sitting on this issue. All those people that are not for this is against it. And all those people that are not against it, well, they're for it. And there's no other way about it. And this rally is going to be to end these sanctions. Not just on Iraq, but Cuba too. Or anywhere else that kills these babies. And it's going to be Saturday, March 23rd, at the courthouse lawn, and there's going to be a peace march. And you want to be there at 11:30 a.m. Now, because we're religious, we also know the four winds of destruction are held back at the River Euphrates. We're not warmongers. We have the Baha'i peace plan. Are the leadership in this country so deluded into self-fulfilling prophecy that they will not lift these sanctions off of Iraq to cause the Armageddon? You think they can't read the Bible that says the four winds of destruction are bound at the River Euphrates, which Jesus Christ gave from God 2,000 years ago? Why are they self-fulfilling this prophecy? Why are they leading us to damnation and a nuclear war to destroy a third of mankind? You think they don't know Saddam's name in the mirror backwards is Mabus, and he'll be killed, and then will come the horrible destruction? This is published in books now on Nostradamus. During the Gulf War, they had Nostradamus on TV, misinterpreting his prophecies deliberately as propaganda. They know if Saddam's killed, we'll be into this. They know the four winds of destruction are bound at the River Euphrates in Iraq, unless they're blind bats that have never even looked at anything. Why are they self-fulfilling these prophecies? Why are they leading us to destruction? Why? They think Armageddon is winnable for them. They think that they can win Armageddon. They think that they can start Armageddon, violate the covenant of Baha'u'llah, murder these innocent children to bring it about, and then go in there and kill Saddam Hussein. And even if he does nuke New York and the UN building, they think that they will survive and set up their new world order. But God has an ace up his sleeve. The establisher of the Baha'i faith in Missoula, Montana. Now, if you play cards, you're going to gamble, you're going to lose. If you roll dice and you can win $5, if you roll a 7 or a 6, you can roll $5 if you roll a 6. You can win $5. But it costs you $1 to play. Your chances are 1 out of 6 that you'll win. Your winnings will only be $4. And 5 times you could lose, which means you'll be down $5. And if your winnings will be 4, you're -1 before you started. So gambling is a sure way to lose. God don't gamble. If you sit down to play cards with God, well, he's got an ace up his sleeve, and you've already lost. It doesn't even matter what the odds are. One man on the side of God is a majority, and this country was founded on majority rule. That's divine democracy. One man on the side of truth can overpower all the liars in the world heaped up together. Now, there's going to be a speaker on campus this week, Eldridge Cleager. I hope other people will go there and see him. You might find some interesting things that he has to say there, too. I plan to attend that for one. but that was something that happened in the 60s. Be at this rally on March 23rd. If you want to know more about it before that, come to the Liberal Arts Building on campus on March 21st and come to the organizational meeting. You don't have to be a Baha'i, you don't have to believe in the things that I've said altogether, but if you simply have common ground that these babies should not be dying by sanctions that don't even affect Saddam, even if you think Saddam should be killed and done away with, these sanctions don't affect him. He's still eating steak and potatoes, so to speak, in his palaces that he's building, but the babies are dying. These sanctions don't work no matter what angle you look at them. And I'm not saying you should look at them from my perspective. Look at them from the perspective of the eyes of those dying babies, and you'll see the truth there. And participate in this thing. Now tonight, because people have no concept of what this Baha'i faith is about, or how it's impacted the real world, or what the prophecies surrounding its ancient origins are, we have a special guest speaker here. She was here last week giving us the dawn-breaking history of the Baha'i faith in part 1, and this is kind of a continuation of part 2 on the history of the Baha'i faith. She's taken her time to gain expertise in this. She's the liaison officer to the Second International Baha'i Council and a very highly skilled and intelligent individual, and I'm happy to say a friend of mine also, as well as the rest of the Baha'i community. And we're happy to have her on our program to enlighten us and the people at home, like a meal fit for a king, the actual history of the Baha'i faith. Wind, it's nice to have you back on our program.
Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everybody. Well, I think I got a tan while I was sitting here listening to you.